But why does that bug people so much?
Yeah.
I came up with the idea that you're a gene fraud. So you're fraudulently displaying to people that you have better genes than you really do.
Bringing you a reasoned approach to health and fitness. This is the Phi Life Podcast.
Welcome to the Phi Life Podcast. I'm John Barbin. With me is Brad Pilon, and today we're brought to you by the Total T Clinic. We're going to be talking about this negative pushback that you see, I guess, online anyways.
Yeah, it's in person too. It's in person.
And in person,
too.
yes.
Yeah.
It's more visible, I guess, online to everybody, but in person for sure. I've heard stories about this too. People have reported it back to me that there's this negative pushback on anyone using Ozempic. We're just going to call all the GLP-1 receptor agonists Ozempic for the sake of this talk. I mean, I get it that tirzepatide and there's other forms, but we're just going to say Ozempic.
Ozempic's kind of what everybody calls it, right? Like,
right, sure.
But anyways, they're the rollerblade of weight loss drugs.
Yeah, right, right. So anyways, that's what we're talking about. So
yeah.
When I say Ozempic, I mean all of them. Anyways, the pushback people are getting about using Ozempic, and I know we touched on this in a different podcast, but anyways, I was thinking about this. I'm like, why does it bug people so much? And I was trying to piece together, like, is it, and you and I got to the point where we figured it's something about fairness, right? It's
cheating and fairness,
cheating and fairness. But again, what do those two things imply? Implies there's a competition. You can't cheat if there's no competition. It's not
right. Yeah.
There's nothing, if it's cheating or unfair, that means somehow you're getting ahead of the other person. But I'm like, what does that actually mean, right? So I think I formulated this theory in my head. Then I looked it up and I was like, okay, this has already been researched. So I did a little research review here and found there's actually not a huge body of research, but there is research on, and now this is pre-Ozempic. So I guess because it's so recent, and now I bet you any money this research, if not is happening now to update it, is going to happen. Okay. But the research trials were basically testing to see people's response when they were told that a subject had lost weight either with, quote, diet pills, bariatric surgery, or diet and exercise.
Oh, shut up. So they saw a group of people and like, hey, these guys lost weight by one of these three, like each group a different thing, and then measured their reaction.
Right.
That's a great study.
So I know. So I didn't want to tell you about it before the podcast.
Yeah, I know. I would have done.
All right. So this is good. This is good. So, So now I get it. Research has its flaws. This isn't my area. There's a bunch of caveats I'll throw in right here. These are mostly undergrad students who are the participants, and they're basically, the way these research trials are designed is the participants, the students come in and they're shown a picture of somebody, and they're given, like, for example, in one case they're just given a statement saying, this is Suzanne. Suzanne was unhappy with her weight, and she chose to do something about it and lost 40 pounds. But they don't say how. They just say she lost 40 pounds. And in some cases, they give you a before and an after picture. Some cases, they just give you her after picture. Right. And then in other cases, again, this is the same picture in a lot of these trials. They're like, this is Suzanne. So,
cool.
Right? So half the students are told Suzanne lost weight using bariatric surgery. Half of them are told she lost weight using diet and exercise. So they would ask the participants, do you think Suzanne is like sloppy or lazy or competent? Like all of these like kind of digging questions. And in different trials, again, there's different ways they did this. In some cases, the person they were looking at was just a woman, and then another time it was a man and a woman.
Okay.
They tried to standardize how much weight was lost, which is kind of weird because like a bigger guy and a smaller woman, it's not likely they're going to lose the same amount of weight.
Maybe gut reaction, the same number. They're just making sure they got rid of that.
Yeah, I mean, they're trying to do this standardized thing. Anyways, the point is, in general, the participants in the study were essentially typically given a picture of a person with a before and an after, or just a person, and then explained a story that they lost weight, and then, or the control could be, that's just who they are. What do you think? What do you think of this person? Nothing about weight loss.
Oh my God. So, okay. The control is basically the pictures, and then what you're testing is the context. That's awesome.
Right, right. So some cases the control is just a picture of a person.
Yeah.
They don't tell them that they lost weight, and they're just, what do you think of this person? Do you think they exercise? Do you think they walk to work? Like, then you show them the before picture that they used to be overweight and they lost weight. Now what do you think of them? And it's interesting because they'll show them their picture, then afterwards they'll reveal that they lost weight, as you would encounter someone who told, oh, I have lost weight, instead of you following them along their journey, right?
Right.
So you kind of, right? So anyways, the collection of research more or less arrived at the general thing where people accepted or saw the people as more favorable if they lost weight with diet and exercise. And these sort of rating scales where they did, do you think they're competent? Well, they got rated more competent. Do you think they exercise more now? Would they walk to work? They just assumed anyone who lost weight with diet and exercise are more competent, less lazy, less sloppy. Like sloppy was really one of the things they were asking. I know, right? It's kind of digging.
Yeah.
Like lazy, sloppy, competent, all of these sort of like kind of character trait assassination type things.
Right.
And again, these are undergrad students in psychology and these type of departments. They're not.
So they're already slightly aware of maybe some of the human biases. Like they're not naive to that, but they're still doing it.
Well, to be fair, they're just undergrad students. We're not getting a good cross section of people of all different ages.
Right.
I'm guessing. I mean, some of this research even tried to link the BMI of the undergrad student and their response based on what they're looking at, and are they more sympathetic if they themselves are heavier?
Right. Right.
Which that actually wasn't as obvious as you would think, and there's a gender thing going on there too. But anyways, the point is these are undergrads, so there was like maybe one or two trials where they had a couple older people that it tended to seem that older people were a bit more sympathetic because maybe they've realized, hey man, everyone who's 20 years old has a way better shot at this, but as you get older, it starts affecting most of us.
So there's multiple trials?
Yeah, 8 or 9 I found. I don't. There could be more, but this is just a little lit review I did just because I thought, I mean, like something about this feels wrong.
Yeah.
So basically they viewed people who lost weight with diet and exercise more favorably in all those sort of potential character traits. And again, this is the same person that they're looking at, just two different groups of people have been told two different stories about that same person. And then though, if they were told the story that person lost weight with a drug or bariatric surgery,
right,
they were deemed to be lazy, more sloppy, less competent, probably still don't walk to work or exercise or do like basically
just like you take shortcuts your whole life.
Yes, you're the type of person who'll take a shortcut, so you're still that person. Is basically how they're being positioned. And again, these are psychology undergrad students. You'd think these students have some amount of, I don't know, like sympathy or something. Sympathy. Maybe too. I don't know. The point is that came right through. They're like, no, that person's probably lazy, or that person's probably sloppy, or they're probably less competent. Like just because of the story of how they lost the weight. So this is like the bias, the unconscious bias coming through, at least in this section of people. But I think it pretty much holds with all the people that are getting picked on for using Ozempic to lose weight.
Yeah,
now,
easy way out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. And then why don't you just diet or exercise? That sort of thing, right? Not the assumption there, I think, is amazing because we've had this conversation too multiple times. Is that you assume if they're taking Ozempic that somehow they're not diet and exercising? Like it's funny, even that trial, right? It's either or. Yeah. Crazy.
Oh, and that's another thing with the bariatric surgery. They kind of, maybe this is just a lack of understanding, but with bariatric surgery, you still have to pay attention to a diet. You still have to exercise. Like those are all like protocols that have to be in place for it to get you anywhere. Like you don't kind of just keep living your life for bariatric surgery to work. Yeah. It's quite strict. Obviously, it's up to you to decide how much you adhere to what you're being asked to do. But post bariatric surgery, you don't just like, okay, now just go do, like they want you to exercise. They want you to diet. They give you like a whole program. So the ones who have the most success are going to do that. But, I don't think the students in this they really put it together.
Yeah.
As far as they're concerned, the surgery was the easy way out, no matter what came after that, right?
Jeez.
So there's this concept that you're taking the easy way out, which I think, based on this research, parallels with how people are getting picked on for using Ozempic. Now, I was trying to get to the bottom of this, but why does that bug people so much?
Yeah.
And so it comes to what I figured out was an evolutionary theory of essentially genetic fitness and mate selection.
Okay.
And this is where I came up with the idea that you're a gene fraud. So you're fraudulently displaying to people that you have better genes than you really do.
Okay, hold on. Let me digest this. Okay, so it's from an evolutionary fitness point of view, is the way you look is a physical indication of your ability to reproduce. You're a better mate, right? You're as a man, you're bigger, stronger, faster, better provider, just using old school stereotypes. And as a woman, if you're leaner, so not like six-pack abs, but not like obese, you are be more likely to bear children to the full term. And so you're saying that by using Ozempic, you're mimicking that look without actually having the genetic fitness behind that look. Okay. Yeah.
Exactly.
I see where you're going. Yep.
So you're hiding your genotype by drugging your way to the better phenotype.
Yeah. Okay. So
right.
It's a great example for that, because it's a trend in the States right now. I don't know if you've heard the term, but D1 babies. So
no, what's that?
Really tall guys who are like 6'3", 6'4", only dating women who are like 5'10" and over for a better chance of having a D1 baby, a tall kid, a tall child. Right. So they call so women who are, let's say, athletes at University of Michigan and also happen to be like 6 foot are desirable because they're going to give you D1 babies, like Division I athlete babies.
Right.
So it would almost be like if I took a pill and I went from 5'10" to 6'3", I'm lying about my genetic fitness. People are like, that guy's going to get me a D1 baby. I'm like, no, you're going to get a sub 6 footer. So, okay, right. I follow. Yeah. So it's faking the genetic outcome of if they had a child with that person. Oh, fascinating. Okay.
So
yeah, I follow.
So why, but again, they don't care. Now, this is specific to changing the way you look. So when I said genotype means your genes.
Yes.
Phenotype means the expression of your genes as how you actually are in the world.
Right.
So we can't see your genes, but we can see the result of your genes. So the phenotype's what you see, the genotype's the genes if we measured them, right? Anyways.
Right.
So essentially by taking Ozempic, you're hiding that you have obese genes, I guess. Genes that I wouldn't want to mate with. I don't want to pass on. I don't want them in my bloodline. And if you Ozempic your way to a body that looks like you have genetic fitness and vigor, well, it doesn't matter. That's a lie. The genes are still the obese genes, not the genes that I want to have anything to do with. So that's where I got to with it. And then they got more nuanced and a little bit clearer with the research. So a couple of evolutionary theory papers had a better explanation that I couldn't put my finger on. Anyway, so they call it, so I'm just going to read a couple things I wrote down here from the research. So a pathogen indicating trait is something we're keyed in to try to avoid. And that's, so pathogen indicating trait. So if you see someone with like open sores on their arm, you would recoil from that saying, is that like a disease that I can get? Like, I don't want to.
Right.
Like certain infectious diseases show themselves on someone. Some of them are you can't see.
Someone coughing up a lung at a coffee house, you're going to not sit beside
someone
them.
Coughing and spewing all over the place. You're going to be like, okay, whatever that is, I don't want that in my body. So that's a pathogen indicating trait that you're like, get away from, right? So pretty, okay, very simple example, but the same thing, like discolored skin or something that's just openly displayed as like, okay, I did that. Whatever that is, if that gets on me, I don't want that either. So that's hardwired into us to like see it.
Yeah.
That's why no one picks on you for taking blood pressure medication, because I can't see it. I can't catch it from you. So fine, I'm not going to pick on you for doing that.
Right.
As compared to being picked on for something that causes you to lose weight. Same thing if I take cholesterol lowering medication. That's a lousy gene that I have. You probably don't want to mix with that gene. You can't see it. And when I take a drug to lower it, I'm kind of doing the fraud thing too. I'm hiding the fact I guess on a lab report, I'm hiding the fact that now, if all things equal without the drug, my cholesterol sucks, and you wouldn't want to mate with someone with lousy cholesterol because our kids are going to have it too, right?
Right.
But since you can't see those, and we're not evolved to react to a like it's not like you pin your blood lab onto your shirt and say, "This is my cholesterol today. This is my blood glucose today." Like, so if you walk around with your list of things you're carrying and it's pinned to your chest, and everyone's like, "Oh, geez, you have that gene and that gene. Get away from me," right?
Right.
But since we can't see it, no one cares, right? But so in the case of Ozempic, since you lose weight, now I can see that you're different. So now you're displaying something other than what you are. Again, I'm not saying this. This is how the research bears out, and this is my explanation for why people are getting so bent out of shape when people take Ozempic.
And there is your thing. So then based on that theory, because remember how you and I were like, you can't be cheating if there was competition, but that theory suggests, no, there is competition. You're
It's 100%.
Yeah, okay.
Well, think about it.
Yeah.
For the people for everybody else, you're moving up the genetic mate selection ladder ahead of me fraudulently.
Right.
Like like again, assuming it's rooted in us that something about being in the obese BMI category we just recoil from for whatever the reason is.
Right.
It's not fair because I'm not that. I'm genetically not that, but now you're pretending you're genetically better than me.
Right.
Again, no one's thinking of this. All I'm saying is this.
Yeah, it's not, again, this is operating system, not forward.
Right. This is like lizard brain operating system. And I think this is explaining the harsh reaction. Now, and then the favorable reaction to when people diet and exercise their way to weight loss.
Yeah.
I'd argue you're still a fraud because in the absence of all that effort, you're still obese.
But
right?
then is it an evidence of that person has desirable traits in discipline, consistency, that kind of thing? You're like, oh, well, you're a mover and shaker, right? Literally.
In that case, you're displaying other desirable traits, as in discipline, effort, consistency, like, all of those things. So someone could be like, oh, all right, so you have lousy genes for weight gain, but you have favorable genes for you're disciplined, you're a hard worker, you're intelligent, like whatever. Okay, so I'll trade off your lousy weight gain gene for your other favorable personality genes, which I would happily like join into my gene line, right?
Right.
So again, I'm making this sound like we're just automatons here. But anyways, so getting back to the little piece of research that was added to this little body here. So it says, evolutionary theory suggests that the detection of a past or present pathogen indicating trait in potential romantic partners could signal flawed genetics. Okay. So I think in this case, the phenotype of being overweight or obese, we somehow psychologically, like deep rooted over a long time, have related that phenotype. So just being bigger than what we would otherwise perceive as sort of normal. There's something wrong with it. And they don't really know why. They think it might be linked to just joints and things looking bigger could be related to swelling. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, why? Yeah. Why does that bug us? Like, who cares? But it could resemble someone who's has an infectious disease that causes like edema and swelling. So like, that's just one simple way they proposed. Maybe that's what's triggering the response. They're like, oh, that person's like, clearly there's something up because they're bigger than they're supposed to be.
Right.
Genetically, subconsciously, we don't know this. These guys are proposing, we may be relating it to like, oh, they're like actively inflamed and swollen. Something's wrong. I don't want whatever that is.
Okay.
And there are certain, pathogenic infections that can lead to like dramatic swelling. So there's a precedent for us to recoil from that. One of the other theories is both on the high end and the low end. So very, very obese and super, super, super skinny.
Emaciated.
Emaciated, skinny. There's one theory that the more you stray from the midline, so really, really big or really, really small, at some BMI size, it's rooted in us. We start recognizing that's not right.
Sickness. Yeah.
Yes, it's sickness in both directions. In one case, it looks like they're starving to death. And the other case, it looks kind of like they're swelling to death. But in both cases, if we stray too far from the midpoint, like the general shape
Yeah.
we're wired to assume someone should more or less look like. Again, there's lots of variation, but I'm talking like as you go to the edges.
Yeah. So we're not talking about individual. It's almost like based on the current structure of your individual body. So this is weird. Most of the time we're talking on a population level, and here we're talking about actual individual data points, right? So like what will be emaciated for you might not be for me yet, right? And the amount of weight I carry, I may hit a level that's recoil before you would hit that. Okay, yeah. So, okay, yeah, I follow.
So whether or not we're not sure. These are just theories, but again, it's mapping on to how we're seeing people harshly react to this Ozempic.
I will say though, it is a theory. So my biggest fun right now is my biggest fun. That's not even a sentence.
That's just awful English.
Wow. Yeah. I enjoy asking people about Ozempic. I really do. Like it's almost like my go-to small talk. And never once have I been like, hey, so-and-so Caitlin is getting great results on Ozempic. Not once has someone been like, good for her. It's always been like, oh, really?
Yeah.
Like not once has someone been like, oh, I'm glad she made the decision to take care of her health, or oh, I'm glad she's finally getting result, or he or she, whatever the case may be. It's always, oh, well, she couldn't just diet and exercise. Like it's really, there hasn't been yet, and this is an, N of probably a dozen, because I don't really interact with that many people day to day, but like it not once has it been like a positive reaction. It's always been a judgmental one.
Yeah, and it's interesting that the reaction is judgment versus, oh, good, she's taking care of her health, as you say. Maybe we know for almost everyone is on it, their blood glucose is going to improve, their insulin sensitivity should improve.
Risk of cardiovascular disease. It's insane, right? Like it's almost to the point where you're like, if you want a conspiracy theory, that's your area, because every piece of research looks into it. They're like, oh, shoot, that metric got better. But that's what we got.
Like lipids, like it's just across the board, not to mention the overall associated risk of obesity with all of those diseases, cerebrovascular, cardiovascular.
You have your addiction info, right? Like,
alcohol, there's that.
Drugs, it's crazy.
It might actually lead you to just be less sort of, if you have an addictive personality or you are led towards addictive behaviors, it might even knock some of that down.
Crazy.
Not to mention just the presence of fat, specifically visceral fat itself is an inflammatory signal and causes or increases your risk of including cancer, right? Like we know now it's linked to cancer. It's not just the metabolic diseases and the cardiovascular disease. Anyways, it's unfortunate that the reaction is just judgment, which is probably, as we were seeing in this research, probably rooted deep, deep in our lizard brain that, oh, you're getting one over on me in the genetic game of life. And now you're fraudulently moving up the ladder of mate competition such that you might get a mate over me that I deserve because you got the lousy genes. I got the good ones. Instead of saying, good for her, she's taking care of her health.
Okay. So two things on that is I find it interesting. The response is not even a curiosity. It's never like, oh, how's he finding it? Or how's he feel? It's always just right to judgment. But then this is an interesting conversation. I wish they would do the exact same trial with TRT or just steroid use. If it's the same thing, this guy built muscle by going to the gym every day, or this guy just took steroids. And I bet you the response is the same. And I think it would be for a unified theory that it's faking your genetics.
Exactly. And that's where I was going with this next is on the other side, right? So on the other side, if mostly for guys, it doesn't really hold for girls, but if guys take steroids, again, it's viewed, because I could never figure out why anyone cared. Who cares?
Who cares?
Like, why not just normalize it? Everyone takes steroids in competition. Then you just level the playing field all over again. And the benefit is to the viewer, because now we get to see humans going like superhuman. Like, nobody wants to see me and Brad play basketball. It's pathetic. We want to see the best in the world. But nobody wants to see even, like, put it this way. Most of the Olympic records you've ever seen are likely drug-induced. No one wants to see the 100-meter sprint slow down by 2 seconds. But they're all clean. They're all clean. So even though we saw a human go that far or that 9.5 seconds, whatever it is, but they use drugs to do that. Take away the drugs. Say, look, the true limit of human ability is 11 seconds. Everyone would be like, that sucks because I know someone can go faster.
Okay, can I jump in here for a second?
Yeah, go.
Okay, dear listeners, the issue you need to realize is that John doesn't pay a lot of attention to social media. So John does not know that a multi-billionaire has just funded the enhanced Olympics coming up, where there is going to be an Olympic Games that are fully drugged, and you're going to be so pumped because you're going to finally get those answers.
No, I don't think so. You know why?
Why?
Well, because they're going to be the same, because everyone in the Olympics is on drugs too.
Oh,
like nothing. No one's going to be any. No one's going to be any faster. No one's going to be any stronger.
Oh my God! So what happens if you have a fully enhanced Olympics and no records are broken? That's good.
They won't. They won't.
I never considered that outcome. That's amazing.
It's going to be the same. Look up at the history of people who've been caught. Like the year Ben Johnson got stripped of the gold medal, everyone else in that race was eventually caught on some sort of performance-enhancing drug.
Oh my, I cannot wait now for the results of the enhanced Olympics, because if you're right, it's going to be mind-blowing.
Oh, it's going to be the same. It's going to be the same. They just don't have to go through the hassle of hiding their drugs, whereas in the regular Olympics, they have to put that extra step in.
Wow.
But whatever.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I'm sure a couple Olympic athletes aren't, but the preponderance of people who've been caught, and in just not just weightlifting, but in sports where you'd be like, really?
Cycling,
someone got caught?
Yeah.
Yeah, like women's rowing, whatever.
God, it's a hard sport. So then, to your point, those people are just faking their genetic superiority. I guess that's not the wrong word, but genetic viability. So it's the same.
Yeah.
Okay.
So with testosterone, if you take super physiological doses of testosterone, or if you naturally, or you're low somehow and you just get yourself back into like a high normal range, well, that's not who you are. Like, you're hiding your genetics again. You're faking your way to being more than you genetically are. So it again, and it only matters because it changes your phenotype. It changes the look and shape of your body. If all it did was correct some kind of blood level of like a lipid that's just not favorable for longevity, and you kind of like, you take it, that particular lipoprotein went down, odds are I'll have a lower chance of CVD. No one cares because they can't see it. But if you take steroids and now you're leaner, you got a better V taper, you have more muscle, you look more masculine, even affects your sense of well-being. It's like, well, that's not fair. You're not actually you don't actually have a better body than I do. Now all of a sudden you have more access to more mates at a higher level than I ever did. And you just faked your way to it, because take the steroids away, that's not who you are. So that's why people care on both sides.
So you could almost go through a list of genetically favorable attributes and be like, if there was a drug for that, it would be cheating, but a drug for this one, it wouldn't. So, a drug to prevent diabetes, not really cheating in most people's minds because you can't see it, but a drug that would lower a voice, possibly cheating, because that's an indication of, virility, etc. Any
Q. And so I guess this is a little bit out of my area. I guess if it comes to plastic surgery and all the different... That was my
next question. Yeah.
I don't know. I guess, this is more... I guess guys are getting into it too, but women have been doing it a lot longer than guys, like all the different things like Botox, like fillers, all that stuff, not to mention full-on plastic surgery, lipo, facelifts, all that stuff. I guess that's also, you get picked on for doing that too, because again, you're displaying as if you're younger than you really are.
Because life is better when you're good looking, so just, it's not fair, but it's true. And so you want good looking children. And so then if you're picking a mate based on their looks and be like, oh no, I bought all this, you should see my before picture, it was horrible, that's misleading.
Yeah, but that one, that one doesn't quite square with me, because as you age, as we all age, your skin just gets looser. Things just aren't as tight as they were when you're 20. So recapturing that's
different than a 20-year-old getting a full nose job, brow lift, chin done, cheeks done, right? because that's in your
right, because they're still in because at that
mating
age they're
season.
still in the game.
Yeah,
they're in mating season. Whereas like later in life, it's like, okay, are you on your third husband? Like, what
And you're
difference does it
typically
make
still
at this
trying
point?
to look like yourself, just a younger version of yourself, versus younger plastic surgery is altering you, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So
I can go with
to me, that one, you're combating the natural process of aging, which hell, I don't. If I can avoid it, I'm going to avoid it too, right? Like whatever I can do to minimize wrinkles and things like that. Why wouldn't you? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, you put it this way. Again, do whatever the hell you want. I'm just for this discussion, and more power to you, whatever you choose to do. For this discussion, I'm trying to get to the root of why people pick on weight loss via Ozempic so harshly, and so we've arrived at what we think it is. It's you're hiding an unfavorable trait, and other people don't think that's
fair.
They're not even consciously aware of why they're picking on you so badly, but that's what it is. You're getting one over on them in the genetic game of life, which is stupid because the people who are reacting, it's not like they're directly competing. They might be commenting on someone who's like in another country or somebody online. It's not like they're actually directly in competition with that person for a person right there in front. Like, we're probably talking about people who have long since they're married, they have kids, they're not in the game anymore. But yet it's such a deep rooted thing to be like, oh, that's not right. That's not fair. I don't want to be around people who are acting like that. So, or I don't want to know people I don't want to know there are imposters all over the place, like something like that. So I don't know how that quite squares with the plastic surgery thing, because no one's really hiding the fact that they're just trying to look younger. I don't think that. Maybe it's just
it's funny, right? So TRT is cheating. Steroids is definitely cheating. Ozempic is cheating. But yeah, plastic surgery is kind of this gray zone where it's not necessarily. It's not a conversation I have with a lot of people. It's, Ozempic's an easy one to bring up.
Right.
But I would say that plastic surgery seems to be a bit more openly discussed on Instagram and TikTok, etc., whereas not a lot of people are coming, openly talking about Ozempic use, or TRT is a bit more open now, but I think that's almost an attempt to. I find there is a subset of guys who talk openly about TRT to mask the fact they're doing TRT plus. Right? So.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So it's like I'm cheating within the rules, is what they're saying out loud, because they're cheating outside of the rules behind closed doors.
Well, but that just gets right back to like there's some acceptable level, and then there's a level that's not acceptable. So, but okay, so you take your TRT and you get your blood measured and you land at 900, 1,000, 700, 600, 500. Like what? So somebody, well, okay, so you're in what we can agree via some research is quote unquote normal physiological,
right?
But that's just because there's happens to be a range. Who says what? That doesn't get to sex hormone binding globulin, how much is free, like your androgen receptor density. Like it's ridiculous when you actually like slice it all up. Who cares? The point is that's not who you are in the absence of something exogenous. So that's not fair because you're intervening at all.
Yeah. So then it's acceptable interventions and unacceptable interventions.
Well, this gets to the idea of what's an acceptable intervention. Again, back to the sports and what's fair or not. Is it fair if you wear glasses because your eyes need correction? Is it fair that you get to wear lenses or glasses during competition? Because that's not who you are. Your eyes suck. Like, why are you allowed to, again, but it's not because you're not getting x-ray vision. You're just coming back from abnormal to quote unquote normal. So it's okay to go from, in this fairness debate, again, people don't know. It's just unconscious. It seems appropriate for someone to go from below what we would determine as normal or average as per measuring a cross section of people, to bringing the ones below average, like, oh man, I can't even see 3 feet in front of my face. That doesn't sound right. But for you, that's just what you are.
Yeah.
But since most people can kind of look around a room and see everything, all right, well, you're allowed to come back to that. But imagine if there was a way to make your eyes like way, way better. Then we'd be like, well, that's not fair because not most people can't see that well. So you can only come back to the crabs in a bucket.
Well, do you remember even, I find this with exercise, it was the Royal Tenenbaums with Ben Stiller, that movie. and he has his kids, and they all look like him. And I think it's the grandfather's like, how many times a week does your dad have you working out? And they're like 20. And it was too much, right? And so I've noticed online, you know, when some influencer throws up a picture of themselves with a shirt on, shirt off, or whatever, and people are always like, yeah, but you get to work out all day because you do this for a living. So there's even exercising too much is not fair.
Yeah,
right?
Because no one else can do it.
Right.
It's crabs in a bucket at the most extreme sense. It's not fair that you have. First of all, life's not fair, right? Get a helmet. Like not everyone's situation is different. So, but it's again, it's this thinking in terms of this theoretical average person, like relating back to their life, or imagining there's an average life, imagining there's a normal, acceptable, I don't know, life. Again, that's so absurd because you'd have to make that. You may have to make that based on which country you're even talking about, what era of that country, what generation,
right.
And then where on earth is that life not average? Mostly everywhere else, it's not the same as where you are. But so everyone's just seeing it from their own perspective, anyways. And it seems unfair if you're doing something to other guys, otherwise get one over on where I am right now, where I live.
Right. Yeah, and it's even. In terms of what is and isn't fair, it's dependent on, to your point, the geography, like where do you live and the time, you know, like it's, like your 20s and 30s living in North America, right? There would be a look for a guy that would be considered handsome, and you might get farther in life just by having that look. But maybe it's the exact opposite look of if you had grown up in Russia. Right? Like first when we were younger, right? It was like that boy band Justin Bieber kind of look was the look people wanted. That only worked in probably North America. And there's probably parts of Europe where people are like, yeah, I'm not hiring you because of the weight. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's so situation dependent on what is favorable and isn't favorable. So how you lose weight and how you train and what's fair and what's not is probably specific to the time you grew up and where you grew up and where you're living now and so many other factors of your life, right? Like it is a fascinating study.
Yeah, and it's just kind of gets back to this the judgment people pass on everybody else. If you're using anything to better your life, and it better or not, it's just for you, and you got to kind of hopefully get to the point where you don't care what other people think. It's just tough, especially when they're right in front of you. If they're family members, friends, it's just too bad that people react this way, especially in the case of Ozempic and or TRT or you know what, even if you do fillers or Botox or plastic surgery, it just makes you feel better about yourself. Like we can't actually measure a blood level of something getting better. It's not like you do fillers and all of a sudden your cholesterol goes down. Like it's, you know, but if you walk out of there and you're like, I like the way that looks in the mirror. I'm emotionally and mentally in a better place when I wake up and that's what I see in the mirror. What is wrong with that?
The obvious answer to getting the true conclusions on this is, has South Park done an episode on Ozempic yet?
I don't know, but they better.
But then when they do, the funny thing is they're so in tune with that sort of the irony of certain situations that their take on it would be interesting, right? Because it would be just that. It would be, they would probably look at the way people react to it and then make a comedy out of that. So
I know exactly what it'll be. Cartman will go on Ozempic. He'll lose weight. Then he'll start making fun of everyone else being fat. Then somehow he'll gain the weight back and then he'll flip flop. And then rip on everyone for going on Ozempic.
Yeah, they should owe you money when that episode comes out. But yeah,
anyways, that's my prediction.
Yeah. But it is interesting. So it is something that hasn't made its way as far as I mean, it's weird because TV is not the same anymore, right? Like it's because I can remember when the original 90210 did like episodes on like the dangers of steroid use, right? Like it made its way into mainstream. Culture, right? And it was like the roid rages and all that kind of stuff. But I haven't seen Ozempic, the weight loss drugs, make their way into any of the mainstream stuff that I have been watching.
Oh, like media. It's just too new. It's
Yeah.
too new to be like incorporated into like the writing. I'm sure it'll get in there sooner or later. But this isn't just people who you could say don't know much about it. Like physicians have the same reaction. Many physicians
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, no,
can
I
have
missed
the
that.
same reaction where like, oh, well, like you can, you should be prescribed it if you have diabetes, but not if you just want to lose weight or vanity weight loss or whatever. Like it's their decision what's best for your life. This gatekeeper nature.
Yeah.
In this case, it's the horses are out of the barn. They can't contain it now. Like from what I understand, some of the manufacturers of the GLP-1 receptor agonists are advertising you just get it straight from them. Like
they're direct to consumer now. Yeah.
Well, they know people want it, and it's not the doctor to decide what's best for you per se.
We actually had an issue in Canada where we had a shortage of Ozempic and the like, and the issue or the suggestion was that people trying to lose weight were stealing the drugs from diabetics who needed it more. And you kind of had a battle of then who has the worst health issues that needs the drug. And it was just a fascinating argument to make. It was like, who needs it more when there's a shortage? But then once that shortage is gone, that argument's kind of but it was interesting that was again, to your point, it was you're just using it to cheat, but I need it for my health. But again, if we're
right, and you're telling me anyone who uses Ozempic who has diabetes who loses just enough weight to not be an obese, they just stop? No, they're going to go all the way to where they like the way it looks.
Yeah, or better yet, and their health outcomes just keep improving, right? Like there is a relationship between the amount of excess mass you're carrying and the severity of your diabetes or cardiovascular issues, and then removing that weight tends to help, right? So everyone's getting a benefit, but you need to benefit more than someone else is an interesting argument. But
well, the medical systems here are so messed up, and they have there's so much artificial scarcity just from the way they're structured that you end up with people get pushed to the front of the line based on need. So the more you could say, I'm not saying this, but one could easily make the argument that the person who bothers to exercise and pay attention to their diet and deal with their sleep and handle their emotions, do all that stuff such that they're metabolically as healthy as possible. They haven't gained much weight, maybe if they have or haven't. They get put at the back of the line because they don't quote unquote need anything.
Yeah.
And if that same person just wants to lose 10 or 20 pounds because they want to feel better about themselves, well, that's not important. But again, this isn't everyone. And I know that gaining weight it feels like it's literally out of your control.
Yeah.
But someone who potentially drinks, smokes, eats whatever they want, never exercises, and so they're utterly irresponsible with their health. They get put in front of the person who's responsible with their health,
right?
Based on need.
Yeah.
You could argue that's the most unfair situation of all. And if you're going to be that irresponsible with your health, no, you go to the back of the line, because I've done my part.
I don't think has been answered, at least not on anything I've listened to. I'd love to talk to an actuary or someone who works deep within the life insurance industry and see how they're viewing the use of Ozempic.
Yeah, that would be that's probably the next thing.
That'd be very interesting, right?
Well, at some point, if you don't ever get to diabetes by taking Ozempic before you get there, then you're probably, my guess, and maybe the data, like to your point, the data will bear out at some point, it's cheaper in the long run to just not get obese in the first place than get there, get diabetes, and now have to fight your way back from it.
Or from a heartless insurance point of view, is that if the people on Ozempic are less likely to need a cash payout, they're actually the better person to insure.
Well, think of all the different complications that come with all of it. Like your lipids go up, your blood sugar regulation gets dysregulated.
Yep.
Insulin resistance starts happening. Like all the things that happen if you're obese and again, it's for how many years you're in that state. It accumulates, right? So if you just cut that off and you spend no years of your life obese versus spend 20 of your years or 30 years of your life obese, my guess, I don't know, but my guess is that the expense of that one Ozempic shot a week for however long is going to be way cheaper and less less of a hassle and drain on the medical system than getting to the point where you have diabetes and obesity and your lipids, you're dyslipidemic now. Now you got to fight your way back from all of that stuff
That's
on
exhausting.
top of taking Ozempic.
Yeah.
Right? Like on top of taking that.
So from a Phi Life point of view, and our opinion that sort of when you are in shape, in a certain shape, life is easier. That's not fair, but it's a fact, right? That just sort of generally speaking, life is a little bit easier when you're in shape. Then the argument for Ozempic is simply if it makes you feel better about yourself, while at the same time improving your health outcomes, while at the same time allowing you to finally get the results you've always wanted so you can enjoy life more, then it really shouldn't matter what other people think about what you're doing. And I guess this, you know what, it's funny because I say that, and then I, by rule then, would have to say the exact same thing about steroid use and TRT, et cetera, right? Like it's probably more important to be in a shape that makes life easier, like makes life more enjoyable and better, right?
Well, isn't feeling better about yourself the whole point of like the
Everything.
psychology? Well, psychiatry and psychology, the entire profession is about feeling better about yourself.
I think so.
So you're allowed to drug your way to feeling better about yourself and get out of depression. But again, you're not displaying a different phenotype.
But then the entire self-help, take care of yourself movement on all the socials, right? The self-love is exactly the same thing, feeling better about yourself.
Yeah, it's not fair you're intervening because if you hate yourself and you're depressed, that's just who you are. Why do you have the right to intervene with a drug and now all of a sudden display the fact that you are happy with yourself and you are a happy person? Because without the drugs, you're not. So that's who you actually are. Again, you could overlay this with just about everything.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
Like I had a cancerous tumor growing in my lung. That's just who I am.
Yeah.
Why did I have the right to step in front of somebody in the medical system and sequester all of those resources to remove that tumor? It's just who I was.
Yeah.
No one could see it. I wasn't getting, now that it's removed, you can't tell, like, but maybe someone would recoil if the tumor was right in the middle of my face and they're like, oh, geez. So, but since it's hidden, it's okay. No one cares. So, okay, fine. You got rid of it, but I'm not getting one over on anyone because I'm look the exact same.
Yeah.
So it's just this, it's a broken concept to even be judging other people for what they're doing. There's just you and what you prefer to do, and it's nobody else's business.
So we'll always judge people based on how they look, and then we'll judge people based on how they arrived at how they look.
Yeah, it seems as though, based on this smaller body of research, which I'm guessing is about to grow, especially with the presence of Ozempic and the related drugs, they're, like we've said before, they're here to stay, and I think we haven't evolved enough to not react negatively to it. So I think it's just going to be a thing.
Yeah, for sure. Because you remember 2005, 2006, 2007, when you and I first started fasting, when it's like, we could be like, hey, I dropped a bunch of weight, and people are like, awesome. And you're like, because I was fasting, they'd be like, that's horrible for you. What are you doing? Right? Like it had the same negative gut reaction because it was cheating, right? You're not supposed to do that. So you're right. I think it's always going to be there until it gets super mainstream.
It's not like fasting's easy. It takes effort.
Yeah. But it was cheating, right? Like, so yeah, we definitely have hardwired into us a way to quickly recognize cheating in this sort of, to your point, in this, just sort of displaying your genetics. It's very, you called it reptile brain, right? Like it's very ingrained in us very quickly we judge so quickly on it.
Yeah, it's pretty sad that's just where we're at. Like we haven't made it much past that, like at all. Yeah. Like we can't even like, again, in these trials that I was talking about, the participants who were asked to judge, they were, 20, 21-year-old undergrads. You would hope they had some amount of empathy and they were open-minded. Undergrads are they're supposed to be, but no, they had the bias just built right into them, just like everybody else. Yeah. So it was, it's there, and that's the younger generation, right? We're not like they have it in them too. So it's clearly not working its way out of them at all. So when they get older, and Ozempic might be useful for if some of them start getting overweight, are they going to be ripping on each other? So like, when's this ever going to end? Yeah. Like if we're talking like 19-year-olds are already doing it.
Right.
So is this ever going to go away, or is this just going to take a long time?
Okay, so then to wrap this up, we can say that if you are on Ozempic and you're getting a negative reaction, this is why, and I think it's important to realize that it's this gut reaction. People aren't really thinking their way through it. But at the same time, if you are someone quickly judging your friends or family for being on Ozempic, you should probably sort of take inventory of why you're doing that, because most likely it has something to do with this sort of false sense of competition. It's not really false, but it is, right? Like you're not actually competing with that person, even though your body thinks you might still be.
Right. So yeah. So exactly. So to wrap this up, this is like a deep-seated subconscious reaction. I bet you if you ask people, they couldn't pin down why. Like this is why I was researching this, and this is why we're talking about it today. I was like, why do people care? And so this seems to be it. So they probably don't even know why. They just go with that deep-rooted reaction.
Because your reaction's instantaneous too, right? Yeah.
It's instantaneous. So to Brad's point, if you're doing this, maybe take an inventory of yourself and be like, does that do you really care, or is this what it was? You just had a harsh reaction, and if anything we said today resonates, like that's where it's coming from. Your lizard brain just took over there, and if you want to use Ozempic or TRT or I don't know, fillers, get a facelift, whatever the hell you want, knock yourself out. That's your life. It's not theirs, and it's whatever makes you feel better. And I guess the last piece is, if you're gonna, just be aware that somebody maybe you weren't expecting might be a little bit judgmental on you, but it's not the them who they think they are that's doing this. It's their subconscious, like built into them, that's reacting to you. So hopefully you don't take it as personally, or you realize now that these reactions are like a kind of carnal. I don't know how else to say it. It's not really who they are per se. They don't even know why they're reacting, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So maybe don't take it personally if people are kind of attacking you, if you choose to do any of this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. It's good for me.
Yep. All right. So I think that's a good place to leave it.
Absolutely.
So for Brad Pilon, I'm John Barbin, and that's your Phi Life Podcast.